So today we are on our fifth segment of the Bust Out series, and the topic is rest. Yeah, that's right. It's no longer optional. So I'm thinking rest. Who doesn't love rest? But based on how common it is in our society not to get enough of it, I think it's a lot of us who aren't putting a priority on rest. And I don't just mean sleep. While there are some cultures that have mastered the art of taking breaks during the workday or enjoying leisurely timed meals, Americans, we tend to do things fast, often tackling multiple activities at one time. I know that when I'm on one of these types of calls, I feel like I'm engaged and listening, but I can promise you I'm doing something else. I'm straightening up my desk, or I'm doing things, folding papers and stuffing them in envelopes, because I think I can do multiple things at one time. But what that's telling my brain is that there's too much input coming in. And if we do this consistently all the time, we can start to feel exhausted. So, according to the physician Sandra Dalton Smith, there are 7 forms of rest that a human needs. I found this so interesting. She wrote a book that's titled Sacred Rest: Recover Your Life, Renew Your Energy, Restore Your Sanity. When I send out the video, I'll put a copy of the book right over here, over my shoulder, so that you can see it if it interests you. In full disclosure, I haven't read the book yet. I have it on my bedside table, and it'll be my next read right after I finish the one about how to get your house organized in 30 days. So as you can see, I need Dr. Dalton Smith's guidance in my own life, and I bet you do too. But I was most intrigued by the 7 types of rest that she spells out. And I felt like that would be of value to all of you to hear about and to process. So step 1 is to identify the type of rest that you think you need. That makes sense. And step 2 is to match the need with the change. Well, that makes perfect sense. So let's dig in a little bit. So I'm going to share the type of rest with you, one short example of a symptom that I think could be attached with that type of needed rest, and what a simple actionable step might be. And of course, as always, for those of you with me live, I'd love to see in the chat what parts you identify with and what suggestions you might have for everybody. And I'll read those out of the chat if I see any appear over there. So your job is to carefully self-select the biggest one of the 7 in your life right now and insert the solution that comes to your mind. If you don't want to share, please, you don't have to, but I love it when you do. So if you feel like it, share it. So here we go. The first one is obvious: physical rest. You can't keep your eyes open. Your yawns are linked together like a chain link fence. It is physical tiredness. And you can even feel your shoulders slump. I had that when I returned from my vacation in Arizona. I got home so tired, I could barely brush my teeth and crawl into bed. That is a physical tired. So what is a logical solution? Well, think about going to bed early without screen time. I have also tried very deep breathing in and out, not necessarily meditation, but I've focused on my breathe real deep in, real deep out over and over again to try and relax myself just a little bit. So the physical one, I think, is the easiest of the 7. I think most of us know what to do when we're tired. Go to sleep. All right, next one is mental rest. This is when your thoughts are turning negative. You can't seem to concentrate. It just feels like your head is full. Have you ever had that feeling before? Well, then a simple solution might be to try some meditation. And if you don't care for meditation, try this: staring at nothing and trying to make your mind blank. I remember one time in particular I did this. One of our favorite places on the planet is Door County, Wisconsin. We have a family condo that we use in Fish Creek, and out on the dock area are these 2 Adirondack chairs that are looking over Green Bay. And in all the years I've been going there, more than 30 years I've been going there, I always take a book and a notepad and things to plan for my work, and I'm always using it as my thinking chair. But the last time we were there, I needed mental rest. I didn't really call it that. I didn't even realize that's what it was till I started preparing for this program for all of you. But that's the first thought that came to mind. I was just mentally exhausted. I didn't need sleep, but I definitely needed a break. So I remember sitting in that chair and a sailboat was coming from the south. And it was so far away, I could barely see it. And I just started watching that sailboat and I waited and it kept getting closer and closer. And then it eventually sailed by me and kept on going to the far north. I must have sat there for over 2 hours with the most blank mind I think I've ever had in my life. I wasn't thinking, I wasn't planning, I wasn't strategizing, I wasn't writing. I was just watching the boat. Absolutely amazing. I see Shannon typed in, simply going for a walk in nature gives mental rest, and it does. And especially with no input of sound, when you're listening to the birds and the crackling of the twigs or the leaves under your feet, it really restores you and really is the opposite of a physical rest and that you're moving. All right, next up, social rest. Ooh, this is a good one. Are you tired of using up your energy to make small talk or to stay closely connected with friends or family, or in the case of social media, people that you hardly even know, but you're using all of this energy to scroll, to comment, or in my case, sometimes to control my internal reactions? I said this on one of the earlier calls that watching others, comparison is the thief of joy. And I really believe that is true when it comes to social media. If you feel a negative energy building up by what others have that you don't have, or opportunities that you feel you've missed, a social media break might be just what you need, or an actual face-to-face social break. One of my favorite things to do when I'm feeling I need a social rest is to schedule quiet days, a day on my calendar that's X'd out, no appointments, no phone calls, nothing going on, just me in my space, focused on what I need to do. I love that. Next up, creative rest. Do you feel a burden in that you're having to brainstorm, create big new projects? Are you planning events? All of you who are on this call today are a professional of some sort in a variety of businesses, and all of you have planning in place. And does that wear on you? Is there so much on your plate that unique ideas are escaping you? There's just way too much. Well, this is one of my favorite stories to share. I love creating new things. And that used to be my go juice. New idea. But I'm not very good at finishing things up. So in other words, I'm great at getting all the ingredients out, not so great at doing the dishes and putting the dishes away, that kind of thing. Well, one day I was on a trip with a colleague of mine, a speaker friend, and she was listening to all the projects I had going on. I mean, I was really being creative. And then she said this to me, and it made a huge difference. She said, "You know what you remind me of?" She said, "You are like Tiger Woods, who has spent his entire life training for a moment. And now he's at the Masters. He's teeing up his golf ball. And before he gets ready to hit it and make this amazing shot, it occurs to him, why don't they have hot dog carts at the golf outings? That would be a good idea. The hot dog cart can pull up. You can go over and get your hot dog. You don't even have to leave the fairway area to go get the hot dog." And she goes on this whole explanation that my long list of creative ideas were all hot dog carts. And then she forced me to take them one by one and decide, did the idea have value? Was it the right time for me to be doing it? What was the true motivator behind why I was doing it? And really against my will, I agreed to get rid of, there was about 12 on the list. And I got rid of all except the top three, the three that were the most important to me. It was very hard for me to do. This was probably about 7 years ago, and I am still reaping the benefits of getting rid of all those hot dog carts. And now when a new idea presents itself and I share that with her, she always says, "Now, is this a hot dog cart or is this something that really belongs on the list?" I want all of you to be asking yourself, do you have a bunch of hot dog carts that are taking your time and your energy when you could be doing something else, or maybe nothing at all? Think about that for just a second. Next up, emotional rest. Do you find yourself being more emotional now than usual? Are your nerves right on the surface? We are noticing out in the world that people have become less civil. I just saw a video yesterday where there was an airline passenger who punched a person out in the terminal. Maybe some of you saw this, the rage and the conflict that's out there. I don't know if this is a post-pandemic symptom or if it's just our human nature. I have no idea, but I do think that all these nerves and emotions are riding on the surface. And if you can feel that for yourself, this may be the area where you need to give it a rest. But how do you do that? What's the practical things to do? Certainly you can vent with someone, you can confide. If it's very serious, maybe it's time for some therapy where a paid professional can help you sort through some of the emotions that you're feeling. A lot of our jobs, we are meant to be absorbers. I know I have a few people in the travel industry with me today. You're absorbing the stress of other people's situations. And so you're like a sponge, you absorb and absorb, but at some point you got to wring out a sponge so that you can continue to absorb more. And if you don't do that, it just builds and builds and builds until all of a sudden you're the one who's ready to explode. So having techniques in place where you can squeeze that water out of the sponge can really help you with an emotional rest. Next up, a spiritual rest. Are you feeling ungrounded? Are you full of personal doubt? Are you questioning the point of self or those around you? Those are some of the symptoms that it might be time to get in touch with your spiritual side. Now, I know that that is different for all of us. For some of you, it may be time to get back in touch with religion, if that's a part of your belief system, or if not, define what spirituality means to you and what tools do you have in place to actually practice that on a daily basis. Because when our calendars get so busy, this can be one of the first things to go. And you may need to bring that back to get you recentered into your spiritual side. Next up is sensory rest. Your symptoms might be headache, fatigue. There's times when I say to my husband, I'm not physically tired, but my brain is tired. My eyes are tired. I don't need to go to bed. I just need to stop thinking. Sore shoulders, carpal tunnel. That's too much tech input, perhaps. So, simple antidote to that is turn it off. Listen to some nice music, read a book, take that quiet walk that they were talking about that Sharon mentioned earlier, taste something divine or bathe yourself in the dark. Look for some creative options, things you've never done before that allows your sensory to come down. Last night, I went over to our wellness center very late in the evening. Usually I go in the morning or the mid-afternoon, but yesterday played out that I couldn't go until it was getting close to closing time. And I'd hurt my foot on the way home from my trip. So instead of working out, I decided to go into the warm pool. And when I got there, no one else was there. I had the entire warm pool to myself. No people talking, no splashing, no music. It was completely silent. And for 40 minutes, I floated in warm water. And I had several of these rests at the same time. But I think sensory was one of the biggest. Because after traveling for 10 days, there was all of this assault onto your senses, from the flying to the driving in 12 lanes of traffic. Thank you, Phoenix, right? And so the sensory relief was a big one for me. Now, that's the end of Dr. Dalton's list. And I'll repeat those briefly for you. I did go through them kind of quickly, but I will go through the list real quick again. Let me back up my notes so I don't miss any of them. Here are the 7, and then I'm going to add an 8th that she didn't talk about. The first one is physical rest, mental, social, creative, emotional, spiritual, sensory. I think that's 7. But it got me to thinking that I believe that there is an 8th type of rest that we must discuss that's just as essential as the others. Now, when I get ready to talk about this, those of you with me live, if you want to talk to me in the chat, now's your chance. We're already nearing the end in the next 4 minutes. So tell me in the chat if there's anything you want me to see about your need for rest, or what idea resonated with you that might be a spark, some action that you're willing to take. See, the other 8th that I think we need to talk about is rest from self-inflicted stress we encounter at work. So I want to bring this back to bust out of service fatigue at work. Stress is a complex defense mechanism that each of us experiences in vastly different ways, depending on countless various factors. So stress at work is also determined by many different considerations, from the environment itself to your rapport with management and coworkers to the attitudes of those you serve, just to name a few. So, for example, think of the difference between a client on a tropical vacation headed to the spa for a massage versus a traveler stuck at a snowbound airport, exhausted, facing a night sleeping on the floor in the terminal. In both cases, those helping these customers are providing a service, but the external factors couldn't be more different, causing a vastly different stress response. So, what exactly do I mean by self-inflicted stress? Ask yourself these questions. Are you constantly running late for shift start times, meetings, or deadlines? Is it time to make adjustments to your schedule and your task list before there's bigger issues? Do you put pressure on yourself to be perfect when no one else has set that unrealistic expectation for you? Time to give yourself grace and understand that there's a reasonable margin of error for us all. Is it possible that you assume you must be the one to do everything so that it's right? It might be time to loosen your grip a little bit and learn how to delegate to let others shine. Let me take a look over here and see what you have to say before I go to my summary. And so Sharon says that social rest would be your need. Sharon, I hope you can decide that if for you, it's take a break from the outside world with meeting people for lunch or having long phone calls, or maybe it's a social media rest. Either way, I hope that you're able to put a box around that and maybe not even set a deadline. Just do it until it feels that you've gotten that rest. Janice says your desk looks like a tornado hit it. Here's one of my favorite things, Janice, is I love to take everything off my desk, or in some cases, my whole office, and then make everything audition to get back in. Those of us who are speakers on the line, you may have heard something similar from our colleague, Eric Chester. He did a speech one time at our conference, our speakers conference, where he talked about taking your keynote material, throw it all out, and make every piece audition to get back in. That struck me so much that I started to apply it to other areas of my life. And that's where that quote comes from. And you pick up every piece of paper and you either put it where it belongs, you get rid of it, or you take a quick action and call it done. It takes sometimes a couple days to get through it, but man, does it feel good when you're done. So good luck on that. Patrick says mental rest from work and grad school. Absolutely. I think that taking a break and being able to say, hey, this weekend when you're on your picnic, you're not checking your phone to see what's going on. You're not worried about whatever homework you have to do for grad. Even if the picnic is only 90 minutes in length, be totally present on that 90 minutes, soaking up that rest. Fern says, yes, self-inflicted stress. I worry about things that never resolves anything. I really had a great tip I picked up years ago from the Dale Carnegie's How to Stop Worrying and Stop Living book. I know Carnegie sounds real old school to some people, but I was raised on this content in the early part of my corporate career. And one of my biggest takeaways was the idea of living in day-type compartments. In other words, right now, the only thing I can be thinking and worrying about is what I'm doing with you. I have something else that I'm doing in an hour from now, and I can worry about that as soon as I'm done with you. I can't worry about multiple things at the same time, or that self-inflicted stress just gets higher and higher. So those of you who have participated, thank you so much for that. So think of all the time and energy we spend bringing extra unneeded stress into our lives. Now think of all the time, okay, some of the time that we could spend on rest and recovery if we let some of that go. The added pressure of perfection or the weight of never-ending to-do lists is exhausting, only making our service fatigue worse. When we actually prioritize rest, all 8 types of it, we start to see it is productive as doing good for ourselves when we do nothing or do those restorative hobbies and activities we enjoy. We are more energized to deliver the customer service excellence that our clients, our guests, and our customers deserve.